Donald Trump was convicted by a New York jury of 34 counts of falsifying business records, with stuff going on with Stormy Daniels back prior to the 2016 presidential campaign, trying to keep her hush-hush about an alleged affair they had. Now, let's bear in mind, the two key prosecution witnesses were Stormy Daniels, a porn star. I'm not going to hold that against her, but Stormy Daniels, and a convicted perjurer. Perjurer meaning someone that's lied in court. So, I think that's it's an interesting couple of witnesses to have to try and convict someone. Look, there are a lot of people, particularly conservative commentators, even conservative commentators that aren't a fan of Trump, who have called this whole thing a farce, right? They've basically said that there was no way Trump wouldn't be convicted, that everything was designed to convict him, irrespective of the truth. And I have seen some things which would suggest that the whole process used here to get the result that we got was dodgy. And that's from as objective position as I can say. There are a few things here that just don't quite stack up. The thing is, it doesn't really matter. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. And there's a couple of things that have come to my attention since preparing for this, that make this a little bit more obvious that it doesn't matter that he's got this conviction. Because since in the 24 hours after his conviction, his campaign for presidency raised over $50 million. The thing is, these weren't $50 million from small contributors, from large contributors, large donors. No, roughly $54 million from 34 million different people in 24 hours. Joe Biden in the last election got around 80 million votes, right? 80 million votes, allegedly, 80 something. I think maybe it was closer to 90. That many votes. How? Well, I think we can debate dead people for that one. But this is the thing. If Trump in donations alone in a 24-hour period is getting over 34 million donations from 34 million different people, what does that say about people viewing Trump as unworthy of presidency because of his convicted felon status? It suggests they could not care less. In fact, it suggests that he has more support now than he did this time last week. That's the reality here. Trump is actually benefiting from this conviction. Now, the only thing where this will actually be an issue for Trump is if he is sentenced to prison. The problem being is he can only be sentenced to prison if a judge is stupid enough to do it. And let's say this is a maximum sentence he can possibly get of 4 years. 4 years, which in a US context is not very much at all, which means it's really not the most severe thing. The issue with, because he is a former president, there are certain things involved with that, which make the logistics of actually having him in prison extremely difficult. It means it's not realistic to have him in prison, because it essentially means that you would imprison a security service person, even if it's on a shift-by-shift basis, with him for the entirety of the time. You'd have Secret Service there with him, in prison, for years. What are the logistics? Do you really think that's reasonable? You really think locking a former US president up with Secret Service for 4 years over something which, if we are completely honest, is so pathetic, petty, and potentially dodgy with respect to the actual process in which the verdict was reached? There are legal experts who think this just simply won't result in jail time. And as such, this is going to be a red tsunami. A red tsunami come November 5th. There is no way in hell Joe Biden is getting a second term as president. It's not going to happen. The guy can't string a sentence together. What I find interesting, though, is many liberals, many Democrat supporters right now, they are celebrating this. They are demonizing Trump as, how dare you be a convicted felon? You're an evil man. No one should vote for you because you are a convicted felon. All these sorts of things, right? Not realizing, not remembering what their own ideological take on felons is. And this is something that I find funny as about like the likes of the Greens and Labour in New Zealand and so forth, is because they will often disregard their own ideological positions in order to demonize those they don't like, which just shows their inherent hypocrisies, right? And just how they are as people. But there was one such self-aware liberal that caught my eye. For once, someone was self-aware. The progressive, in fact, and I mean, very progressive, self-aware. So let's check it out.
It is almost a year to the date since Donald Trump attacked me, and I would say ultimately that did not work out well for him. But I am doing great. On a more serious note, this set of convictions has me thinking about how many people are going to demean and degrade Donald Trump because he is now a convicted felon. And they're going to use that felony status to discredit him as much as possible. And there are many deplorable things worth discrediting about Donald Trump. Let me be the first to tell you. But using felony status and conviction status to do so is going to disproportionately harm Black people, people of color, sex workers, folks that are marginalized in our society through racism and white supremacy. Some of the best people I've worked with are folks that were also convicted of felonies. And now it feels like a good time to remember that legality does not equate morality. So while Donald Trump is a horrible person, it's not because he was convicted of a felony, or 34 of them. And using felony convictions to judge people's moral character is only going to reinforce a racist prison system and white supremacy. I understand the urge to celebrate. Believe me, I do. I also understand that a lot of us are still skeptical that this isn't going to change anything. And while we're talking about this, I just want us to be careful about how we talk about it. We don't reinforce racialized tropes while we do it. I love you. Fuck Donald Trump, and I'll talk to you soon.
So, I mean, yeah, this dude, I'm going to call him a dude because that's what he is, has acknowledged that, you know, the progressives in the US in particular, they view it as bad to marginalize people with felonies, marginalize people, or demean people. You know, treat people differently because they've had a felony. Because, of course, that disproportionately impacts minorities. And as such, this individual is pointing out the hypocrisy and using the felony status to demean or devalue Donald Trump, to view him as immoral or treat him that way. Because, of course, that would very much be hypocrisy. And so even crazy people can understand hypocrisy from time to time and be, to some degree, self-aware. So to that person, I respect that video, even if the only reason why you really are wanting that conviction is because you are hoping that it means Joe Biden will win the 2024 election. It simply isn't going to happen. Joe Biden has never looked less likely to win the election. Every poll has supported Trump for quite a while now. It looks like a very, very comfortable win incoming. Sure, things can change. Sure, there could be some untoward behaviors that could result in something not going quite to plan. But I think Trump is just statistically the favorite. I think there can be no question right now. Trump is the favorite to become president of the United States again in November. But the other thing is, and it's alluded to here about how it would disproportionately affect Black people and people of color, other people of color, and minorities. And this is the other thing that helps Trump. This is why it helps Trump more, because those same people that are marginalized, those same people who are most impacted by the criminal justice system in the US and so forth, will resonate with this. They will look at this as the powers that be trying to knock you down, keep you down. And as such, we should rally behind you because you are being knocked down. We should rally behind you because you have something in common with us. This Joe Biden guy, he can't even put a string, he can't even string a sentence together, let alone resonate with us. Remember, it was Joe Biden who said, poor kids can be just as smart as white kids. So, I mean, he is obviously very out of touch with the, non-white community, let alone the community of people who are everyday Americans. But, you know, with all this being said, let's say the hypothetical situation, Trump is sentenced to prison. What happens? Simple. Whoever Trump endorses to take his place wins in a landslide. And in this case, I think the front runner for that will be Ron DeSantis. But given he already has the second most support anyway, and I think people probably look at him as a natural successor once Trump's official, term limit has expired. So you would look at someone like him. Maybe Vivek Ramaswamy would try and contest Ron DeSantis on that, but I think whoever Trump says, that's my guy, that'll be who wins the election in a landslide. Simply because if Trump is put in prison for something that already looks fishy, then there is really no justification whatsoever to vote for the president that imprisoned his political rival that was ahead in the polls and looked almost guaranteed to win the election.